Hi there, and welcome back to another one of my PSDK and Pokemon Workshop tutorials. In the last video, or I guess in the last 10 videos, we've pretty much covered all that you can currently do in Pokemon Studio, which included creating a new Pokedex and giving that Pokedex in-game, creating a new Pokemon, giving it any custom information that you wanted, the move pools that it can learn, and assigning the graphics, which was slightly changed. Shortly after I made that video, there was an update in PSDK. Previously, you just had to put in the graphic in the right folder with the right name. However, now you have to physically assign the resource over here in this new resource tab. It's very self-explanatory. The front graphic goes here, the back one, the shiny. If you wanted different sprites for females, you toggle this and then it adds a new row. And then you set the icons, the icon if it's shiny, the footprint, and the overworld sprites. So over here we had moves. We had made a new light type and then assigned the light type to like Thunderbolt and made it, changed it a little bit. Over here, we didn't really go over this too much, but you can make a new ability, but we didn't really go over how you assign that effect. We showed how to do new types. We added a new item. I believe it was like the Dark Ball or something. We went over creating new zones and assigning groups to these zones, which is how you do your wild encounters. And we've even gone over how to create new trainers, their teams, and their items, as well as like what each AI level is, how to give them dialogues, and then also going over how to do quests. So now I feel like we've covered so much stuff that it's really time to like push you guys into the eventing. But before I do that, I think it's really, really important that you make a backup of your game online on either GitHub or GitLab. It's really up to you. It's totally personal preference. I personally use GitHub, and I will be showing you how I do it for Umbra, but there's multiple ways to technically version your project, which means uploading it to one of these websites where you can then share it with your team. They can then do pull requests. They can then make a merge request. You can merge it into your actual main development branch. There's a whole world opening up for you right now. But really, this also helps you make sure that your game doesn't get corrupted. This helps prevent you from accidentally overwriting something and totally losing it forever, as now you have this version that whenever you make changes, you can push it to GitHub or GitLab and it will stay there. You can always revert to these changes until you're ready to push a new change or whatever, however you decide to handle it. But this is a really big thing that I think most developers really should do. And I know it seems really scary when you hear GitLab or GitHub, because usually this means you have to handle a command prompt and a lot of things are like, a black box with white text. In the last few years, they released something called GitHub Desktop, and I think it's honestly a really, really good program. It makes it really easy to handle and manage your project. So the way that I'm going to be showing you how to do it is how I do it, and I use GitHub Desktop. I also use GitHub, not GitLab, so I will be showing you how to do that as well, how you'll be making your own private repository. You'll be uploading your project to that repository, and then we will be making a submodule of Pokémon SDK, which will then allow us to view all of the script files when we want to make our custom abilities, our custom moves, or our custom item effects, or really anything custom. And you're going to have to reference that base code. This will allow you to do that while also keeping PSDK fully up to date. And I know that could sound kind of confusing because previously all you had to do was go here and update Pokemon SDK through here. But if you do plan on making a lot of custom stuff for your game, I kind of recommend this route, because you're gonna have a Pokemon SDK folder in your games folder, and then we're gonna make a workspace in VSCode, which will have 3 important folders, which will be your scripts folder, your custom scripts, your Pokemon SDK folder, which has all the base scripts, and then a dialogues folder, which is going to have all of your translated text, which this one's not too necessary, but I'm still going to show you how to do it in case you ever want to quickly modify a CSV in VS Code. So to get started, you're going to have to go to GitHub and you're going to have to make an account if you don't already have one. I'm not going to be going over that process with you. However, I will go over how to set up your first private repository and how to upload your project to that repository. So once you've made your account, right, you should be seeing a screen similar to this. What we're going to do over here is we're going to click New, and you're going to call the repository name whatever you want. Ideally, it should be something that is going to probably represent your project. So maybe in my case, I'm just going to do PSDK tuto because for me, that represents what my project's going to be. I always pick private because I don't want everyone to see everything that I'm doing, especially since it's a game that I'm working on. I don't want everyone to see all the custom scripts. I don't want everyone to see all the graphics, all the stuff, which this will basically keep it to where only the people that you share the repository with, meaning that you invite them to be a collaborator on your repository, those are going to be the only people who can then look at or pull from your project. So after you click private, you could go down here and you could add a README file. This isn't necessary at all. However, this will allow you to, when you go to the projects page on GitHub, you could have like a little README file that basically explains how to do something. So you could explain to your people how to set up GitHub Desktop and how to pull the project basically in the README. So for our example, we're going to leave the README here, but it's not necessary. And then there's going to be this add GitIgnore. You're going to just set this to none because we don't have a template for this, but I will leave something in the description, which is just the GitIgnore that I use for my project. It basically just ignores any log file, any HTML file, any of the saves, any file that is like zipped up in 7-zip for some reason, the game options, the log files. This is usually an error file. We're not sharing our errors basically. The studio project file, psdk.bat, because this will prevent someone else from being able to open theirs. So they're going to have to get their own psdk.bat from their own project basically. We're not sharing the data and the data text, but we are sharing the dialogues folder specifically. And we're not sharing any data files like in the dialogues folder, which this is because we are pulling the dialogues, but we're just not pulling those data files. This is gonna prevent sharing the PSDK folder, but we're also sharing map links and system tags. We're ignoring and a few other things. So overall, you just copy and paste this and add this into your project in just 1 second. I'll show you where. So after we've created this new repository, we're just gonna click create a repo. And now you have this, right? It's going to have your repository name here, and then you can click on this edit, and then you can make changes down here. And then you can click preview, and it will show you how it would look like this. If you want to save your changes to your README, just click commit changes, and then you can give a little description. This is usually basically explaining what your change is that you're pushing. So this is just an update to the README. It doesn't really need too much of a description, but if you are working with people, having these descriptions is going to be really nice. All right, so now when you go to the PSDK tutorial repo on the main repo, you're going to see this. So the next thing that you're going to need is GitHub Desktop. Just Google GitHub Desktop and click on here, this first link, and just download for Windows 64. Download it wherever you want, and then just start the setup. Once you install it and you open it, it's going to ask you to sign in. You can sign in through your GitHub account. Then after you've signed in through your GitHub account, you're going to have to do a configuration. Personally, you should just use your GitHub account's name and email address. And then it's going to ask you if you want to get started, and it's going to say, do you want to create a tutorial repository, clone a repository from the internet, or create a new repository on your hard drive? What you're going to do is click on clone a repository from the internet. Now, if you already had an account and you already had GitHub Desktop, it's the same as clicking here, clicking add and clicking clone repository from URL. It's going to ask you for a URL and a local path. This is where it's going to pick where to put your repository. Now you can't pick where you've already started, unfortunately, because it does need to be an empty folder, and it's basically going to make a new folder. So what we need to do is go here to GitHub and go to code and go to HTTPS and click on this and copy this. This is going to be the URL that you're going to use here. And as you see, it just added this little extension here at the end, this new folder here. So it's going to make a new folder based on whatever the name of your repo is. So for us, I'm going to actually do it over here in this PSDK tutorial folder where I have a few different projects going on. And I'm going to click select folder, and as you see, it does have this right here. It's making that new folder for you. That's the same name as your repository. So then we're going to click clone. And since we have nothing in our repository yet, it's actually going to be very quick, very easy process. Now what I'm going to have you do is go back here to where you just created that new folder of PSDK tuto, right? And then I'm going to move everything I've done so far, and I'm going to put it in there, okay? So this is our tutorial project. I'm just going to put it in the PSDK tuto folder. So now when I click on GitHub desktop, it's going to have a ton of new changes. So basically this is going to be our initialization. This is our first initial push to our repo. So I'm going to say PSDK init. However, there's going to be a lot of things in here that we don't actually need. So before we do any actual push, we're going to need to make a new file, new text file. It's going to be called .GitIgnore. And we're going to say yes. We're going to open this, and you're going to go to the description of this video, and you're just going to copy and paste all of this. We're going to put it in there, and we're going to save. And now this was 14,649 files, but now it's 13,992. It's not a huge difference. This is going to push over all of our music, and it's going to push over all of our graphics. It's going to push over all of our map files. It's going to push all of the data of our game. That's what's going up there. Now, if you wanted to change that, it's actually really easy. And again, we can just open that GitIgnore. And I'm going to kind of try to explain how this works, but you can definitely Google it. Basically, you're giving it a file path on things to ignore. So if I wanted it to ignore my audio folder, I would literally just type audio, like so. This would now make it ignore all of my sound effects, my background music, every file that's going to be in here is going to get ignored. So it's 13,992. It's now 13,018. So after you've configured your GitIgnore however you want, you go back here, and then now we're going to do our initial PSDK push, right? We're going to commit this domain. It's going to take a while because this is a ton of files. All right, so that took me a good few minutes, and I do have a pretty powerful PC, so it could take you a while. Whenever it's done, just click on push origin, and now once this is done, you can go to your history, and you can actually see here we have our initial commit, we have an update on our README, hi, I'm an example, and then the initial PSDK push, which is all right here with our GitIgnore, all of our data files. So now when we go back to here, what was previously just the README, when we refresh, is going to be an entire project. So now that we've basically set up our PSDK project up onto GitHub, you can try launching your game. You're going to notice that you're still on version 26.20, but it's not going to work. You're going to have issues, right? This is because now you're a versioned project. You have to do another step. So the next step is that we need to make a PSDK submodule. This step is actually very similar to what we just did, but it's a little bit easier. Now what we're going to do is we're going to create another repository. We're going to create this one inside of our repository that we just made. So we're going inside PSDK tuto, or whatever yours is called, and we're going to go right here and click select folder. Then we're going to go over here to GitLab, or in your case, just go in the description, and I'll have a link there. You then want to go to code, and you want to go to clone with HTTPS. You'll then paste the URL in here, and you're going to see it's going to say PSDK tuto / Pokémon SDK. We're then going to clone this. And this shouldn't take too long. We're going to do initialize git LFS. We're going to now have this Pokémon SDK submodule over here that you are going to have to keep up to date, because now that you're working on GitHub, Pokémon Studio will keep updating PSDK for you, but that's in a separate folder, and you're using basically a local version of Pokémon SDK instead of this global one, which basically allows you to keep a specific version of PSDK in your local files of your project, and it would basically keep it on that version if for some reason you really needed to stay on an older version. So you may be wondering, why did I just add my project to GitHub? Is there any real benefit to this? So this is really for if you're working in a team. Now everyone can have all of the files, you'll be sharing them, and they'll be able to work on the game, contribute to the game without having to use either like Discord or just sharing the files like directly. Also, if you end up using a launcher in the future, you can set up your GitHub project to the launcher, and though you're most likely going to end up creating a separate one, like a release version, instead of like doing it from your development build. But the point is, this is really just like the first stage of allowing like contributions to your project if you're working in a team, or just like I said in the beginning, basically how to keep your files from either becoming corrupt, or just how you can go back to an older version of a file, which I'll show you right now. So let's say, for instance, I was in here and I went into my graphics folder and I went into pictures and wanted to change our hero here, and I wanted to make him look like Oak, right? So let's open both of these in Paint, and let's paste him here, and let's just do it like so. Right now we go back to GitHub, and you can see right here it shows you in a preview as well what it used to look like and what it looks like now. Now let's say, for instance, I didn't even mean to do that, right? But I've lost this file because now I've closed paint.net, right? So now I've lost this file and there's no way for me to get it back. Well, fortunately, you can actually just discard your changes and then go back to that file, and it looks exactly like it did before. So this is one of the many benefits of using GitHub and versioning your project. It's going to basically prevent you from potentially losing something. The idea is that it's there to help you, and really this is just like an extra step in security. There's a lot of benefits in my opinion. So I wanted to share this. So I believe I had two more things that I wanted to show off, which was showing how to make a workspace and how to add collaborators. So to add collaborators to your project, basically if you have people helping you out and working on it with you, you need to go back to GitHub and go to your repo and click on settings, go over here to collaborators, and then you need to type in your password. Once you've put in your password, you can then go to add people, and then you have to type in their username, their full name, or their email. And when you do that, you could then send an invite. So for example, if I wanted to send an invite to my friend Omega, I would type in his username like so and just send him an invite. You may be wondering, what is a workspace? A workspace is a thing in Visual Studio Code that allows you to have multiple folders at once that you can search through and do whatever you want through its functions and stuff. Visual Studio Code is what you're going to be using when we are making custom abilities, moves, items, or whatever. I believe they have a video over on the Pokemon Workshop YouTube on how to properly set it up so that you have all the plugins and everything, so I'm not going to be going over that entirely. But what you need to do is install Visual Studio Code, which will be linked down in the description. And once you do that, you're going to see a window like so. So once you open Visual Studio Code and you have a screen that looks like this, you're going to go back to your project, and we're going to take the scripts and the Pokémon SDK folder. We're going to drag it here. We're going to open this open on the side, which is going to show that we've opened these two folders, the scripts folder and the Pokémon SDK folder. And then we're going to go back to our repo again, and we're going to go into our data, text, and we're going to drag the dialogues folder into here as well. We're going to do add folder to workspace, and now we have three folders here that we can search through and modify whenever we need. This is going to allow us to find methods in PSDK's code. So for example, you could do def get ss, right? Or sorry, you could do get ss, and you can see the actual code on how this method works. You could also do things like add Pokemon, and you can see how this works. You can see how it's written as well, so you know that you need a Pokemon or an ID, you need the level, and you need to say whether it's shiny or not, otherwise it's just going to default to it not being shiny. So this is how you're going to learn how to find code in PSDK that you will then later take over here into your scripts folder and make custom scripts for. So the custom code that we're going to write here in these scripts is going to be known as monkey patches. They're loaded after the base code of PSDK, and it basically changes any of the methods in a specified class, or it can add new things to a class. It's a really cool feature, and we'll be probably going over it in one of the next few videos coming up. I haven't decided whether I want to do custom like movability and item effects, or if I want to start going into eventing stuff yet, but we'll be going over how to make custom stuff very soon. I can promise you that. Now, one last thing that we need to do is, since we did change our location of our project, we need to re-add our project to Pokémon Studio. So big thing that we don't want to forget. So when we open Pokémon Studio, it's going to have this broken image here because this is no longer a real file. So we're going to close that. We're going to do open a project. We're going to go here to our project folder and then click on project.studio. It's then going to load in our project, and then we are good to go. Now you have your project up on GitHub. You can now send your teammates an invite to your project. They can then make a pull. They can then pull from it, and they can start making their changes. You can now prevent any permanent changes, essentially. Now you know how to make a local version of PSDK because we did that submodule. And just in case you did forget to update PSDK now for your project, it is gonna be in your repo's Pokémon SDK folder. You're gonna have to fetch origin whenever there's an update that comes out in PSDK. It's just how it works now. This is one of the unfortunate parts of being on a versioned project. However, it also allows you to pick which version you're on. I know some people don't like downloading an extra program, so I do believe on the Pokemon Workshop YouTube channel you can find a video. I might have it on the middle of the screen right now. This video will show you how to do everything that we just did, but in the command prompt, in case you don't like downloading an extra program, or you're just more tech savvy and you prefer using the command prompt. You can totally do that and just click on the video in the middle, and you'll be good. With all that out of the way, I hope this video helped you, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.